Hello. Welcome back to Two Nates on Sports. My name is Nathan Simmons, and with me as always is Nathan Kwan. We don't have too much to discuss about besides, the Super Bowl. Yes, the Super Bowl is happening this weekend, this Sunday in Minneapolis. It's going to be a repeat of the 2004-2005 Super Bowl, I believe, between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots. A lot of people siding with one team over the other, but does the underdog have the chance?
Oh, absolutely. I wrestled with this whole week thinking about whether the Eagles could pull the upset. And absolutely, they can win this game. When I look at these two squads, I look up front first, and I would say the Eagles have the better defensive line and the better offensive line. They have playmakers on the defensive side with obviously Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham on the defensive line, and then their O-line. They're missing Jason Peters, but Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey, the right side, it doesn't get much better than that. So I think if you're going to go strictly off the trenches, Philadelphia, if they can control the line of scrimmage, they have a great shot in this game.
Well, yes, they may have the better defensive line and the better offensive line, and arguably definitely the better running game, honestly. And I mean, it's arguable whether or not who has the better wide receiver core. I'd still give the New England Patriots the better secondary just because they have the better cornerbacks and Stephen Gilmore and Malcolm Butler. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is a quarterback league, and they have the best quarterback in this game and arguably the best quarterback in the league in Tom Brady. I mean, yes, you have all the controversy with everything that goes on in his life just because he's Tom Brady and he decides to market his diet to other people. But I mean, at the end of the day, too, he's still Tom Brady. He's still 40, but he's arguably the most valuable player in the league. He's arguably the best quarterback of all time, and he's at the top of his game right now. And he still has a good receiving core with Brandon Cooks, Chris Hogan to some extent, Rob Gronkowski, obviously. I would still say this is New England's game to lose.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, Tom Brady, quarterback edge is significant. You look at these teams over the latter part of the year, and New England's defense started off the year so terribly. I've been mentioning the week 3 game against the Houston Texans where they arguably should have won with Deshaun Watson making his second career start. But they've definitely turned it around over the latter part of the year. Their rushing defense especially has been outstanding in the AFC title game. Leonard Fournette was pretty much held in check, and they basically said, Blake Bortles, come beat us in the fourth quarter. And while Blake Bortles did have a very good game, he threw for almost 300 yards, didn't turn the ball over, but he just wasn't able to make enough plays in crunch time. And I think that's going to be the similar way that New England approaches this game with Philadelphia. They're going to basically tell Nick Foles to try to win the Super Bowl and going to limit the running game of LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi and try to make the Eagles offense one-dimensional. On the other side of the ball, Philadelphia, they've been so good in secondary. We've been saying how their secondary has been kind of the weakness of the defense throughout the NFC playoffs, and they've held up against both Matt Ryan and Case Keenum and the Vikings, and they're going to have to do it one more time against New England. I think the Patriots have the best game planning in the league, where they try to exploit your weaknesses. And I think for Philadelphia on their defense, I think the linebacking core in the underneath routes, I think the Patriots are just going to try to throw those all day long against them with those little check downs and underneath throws. I think Philadelphia's been really strong going up the field with their secondary and getting pass rush on the quarterback. And obviously the Patriots want Tom Brady upright. They don't want to get him hit, which has been a recipe for disaster in past Super Bowls for the Patriots. But yeah, no, I think I'm going to regrettably take New England in the end in a close game. I think definitely if you're betting, I would take Philadelphia plus the 4.5 points. I think it's going to be close. Philadelphia certainly has a shot to win this game. It would not surprise me at all if they won this game. But I just think that the game plan of New England, they'll be able to exploit the weaknesses on Philadelphia on the defensive side. And then on the other side, I think the Patriots are just going to make Nick Foles try to beat them over the top. And while he has been able to do that, getting the ball down the field to Alshon Jeffrey, I just don't see him being able to hoist the Lombardi Trophy over Tom Brady going for his 6th.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, what's your score prediction? Mine's is 24-10 New England.
Oh, no, I don't think it'll be that lopsided. 27-24 New England. I really think it's going to be down to the wire. I think both offenses are rolling at this point. Both defenses are playing well, so I don't see it being that one-sided.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're both going with New England. We'll use the tiebreaker of whoever gets the closest score. But yeah,
Who are you rooting for, though?
I'm rooting for the Eagles. I don't want the Patriots to surpass the Cowboys, but I mean, at the end of the day, too, this is more on the Cowboys' like ineptitude for the past 20 years than necessarily New England. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you know what? At the end of the day, too, I also have a friend. I don't have any friends that root for the Eagles, but I have a friend that roots for the Patriots. So, I mean, like, I don't want my friend to not be happy. So, I mean, like, while I'm kind of rooting for the Eagles in this, like, I'm not rooting that hard for them. Like, I'm still going to be talking with my friend that's a Pats fan throughout the game, and I hope she walks away happy to some extent. You know, at least I hope for an entertaining game.
Oh, for me, I think New England fans have had enough happiness for a lifetime. I mean, seriously.
Well, I care
Uh,
about my friends, so screw
no.
me, right?
That was the thing I thought was interesting because I was talking to Texans fans while watching the AFC Championship game, and there was a few that were like, "No, we can't ever root for Jacksonville. It's an interdivision rivalry." I'm like, "What?" I don't care about Jacksonville's success. It's you don't want New England to win, and I guess for you, it's not a anti Eagles, anti NFC East team sort of thing as well.
Honestly, if you're like that, like if you're rooting against someone just because they're in the same division as you, like grow up. Like I mean, I was rooting for the Houston Astros during the World Series because A, I had friends that were Astro fans and I wanted them to be happy, but B, also like I wanted to see a team that win it for the first time. And even though that meant that the Rangers were not going to be the first Texas team to win the World Series, like I mean, it's not anything here nor there, and anything in any way that's the fault of the Rangers. Like they've had their chances quite a few times. Don't root against a team just because they're in your division. I mean, even if like they're your hated rival, don't go that far, I would say.
Yeah, I'll definitely be rooting for Philadelphia. I think the wealth needs to be spread around a little bit. New England has had enough happiness in their life. I
What
don't
does that
really have.
sound like?
I don't have huge Philadelphia ties. I do know a few people that are Eagles fans, but good luck to them. Go Eagles.
Alex Smith has been traded from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Washington Redskins. This means so much, but yeah, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think it's money is a factor here because if money wasn't a factor, if you were to ask me to take Alex Smith or Kirk Cousins, I'd take Kirk Cousins because he's been really great for the Redskins. And also, Smith is what, 33, 34 years old. But I think it's a purely financial trade for Washington. I know Kirk Cousins is probably going to get a lot of money on the open market. And Alex Smith is definitely a cheaper option at this point in his career. And I think Washington just never believed in Cousins as a franchise quarterback, and they've certainly had a firsthand look at him for what 4 or 5 years now. And if you can't determine after that period of time that he's your guy, then you have to move on. I think this is a good trade for Kansas City. Obviously, they get to move on and they get a draft pick as well as they get to move on to Patrick Mahomes, who was their first round pick last year and is very highly regarded around the league. So we'll see how Kansas City goes next year. It will be interesting to see where Cousins goes. He's been rumored to Denver. I think that would be a good fit for him.
That'd absolutely be an incredible fit for him. Like him or Jacksonville, honestly. Like Denver or Jacksonville really would be the best landing spots for him, just because like he would have like finally a defense on the other end that could really stop something. I mean, like with Denver, at least, like assuming that they still keep Emmanuel Sanders and Demarius Thomas, they would have a better receiving core there. But I mean, at the end of the day, too, also like having Leonard Fournette and TJ Yeldon in the backfield really does help with Jacksonville's case, taking the pressure off Kirk Cousins for delivering. And for Washington, like if they for the past few seasons, if they can't tell that Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, then they never will. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, and I honestly laugh at Washington for thinking that he's not. I mean, yes, like they have way more holes to fill than quarterback, and honestly, like the contract that he was going to get may have been prohibitive for them to getting that, but that's on you, Washington, for drafting and making sure that you draft the best players at each position and trying to fill those in with that. Instead, you're now letting a franchise quarterback walk that you drafted the same year as the one that you were supposed to draft in the first place. So not only did you get lucky in terms of, hey, you ended up still getting a franchise quarterback in that draft, they ended up they're now letting him walk for nothing, and that's if you're a Washington fan, that's gotta be the most frustrating thing, because like you're not getting anything in return for him, except for maybe like you put like a first year tender, or not first round tender, but at least like some sort of some way to get a compensation for him. But even still, that's, I mean, like when you could have gotten like at least a first round pick for him during the season, like you just got to shake your head and just wonder what this Washington team is thinking.
What do you think about the fit of Alex Smith in that Washington offense? You mentioned they certainly have a lot of other holes and problems with that organization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if they don't use the extra money that they're now supposedly getting to fill in that offensive line, then I'm going to feel real bad for Alex Smith, because he's going to get lit up like a Christmas tree. Alex Smith isn't the most non-mobile quarterback, but he's definitely struggled with his mobility. I mean, the receiving core there isn't bad. I mean, obviously, like Terrell Pryor was a huge bust, but they have Jamison Crowder, Josh Doxson. Run game, assuming Samaj Perine and Chris Thompson was real good. He could both catch, run out the backfield. Like, I mean, like they had some great weapons there. So I mean, like, it's not like it's going to be impossible for him to really benefit from this, but like again, like the thing about Kirk Cousins was like, yeah, maybe he was a little bit inaccurate, but like he could also throw it, chuck it 20 yards down the field with some accuracy. While Alex Smith is infamously known for only playing it safe, being more of a game manager to some extent, a very good game manager and very accurate passer, but nonetheless, like he's not someone that like is going to chuck the ball downfield 30 yards. You know, I mean, I think Alex Smith is going to be okay for this Washington team, but they really, really messed up here, I think.
Yeah, I think he'll have more weapons in Washington than he had in Kansas City. Outside of Travis Kelce, there wasn't a downfield threat in Kansas City.
They had Tyreek Hill, but like he wasn't, again, like you said, he wasn't that much.
Yeah, more of a kind of a speedster guy. You can throw a bubble screen to him and he can take it to the house, but not your kind of possession receivers, which I think he'll have more of in Washington.
Yeah, well, let's now move on to the NBA. The Houston Rockets have been pretty good this past week. Take us through it.
Yeah, they went 3-0, beat the Phoenix Suns in a very sluggish game last Sunday afternoon, and then Tuesday night, if you didn't see, James Harden, first 60-point triple-double in NBA history. The Rockets were playing shorthanded. They were missing Chris Paul. They were missing Eric Gordon. They were missing Trevor Ariza. So Harden had to play heavy minutes, played 45 minutes, and the Rockets kind of struggled against a bad Orlando Magic team, but Harden to the rescue. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I was watching that game, and part of me was just frustrated about how bad the Rockets were playing, but then Harden just put the team on his back. I think he had 60 points on 30 shots, so he was very efficient. He was getting the free throw line, and also the triple-double aspect. He was getting his teammates involved, even though a lot of the scoring options for the Rockets were out that game. And we're just watching something special in Houston, and I think James Harden sometimes is a little underappreciated, I think, in the national media. Maybe for his lackadaisical defense and the fact that he really hasn't done it in the playoffs when it's mattered the most. But I mean, what he's been doing in the regular season the past 3 years, and he's been snubbed for MVP twice now. I think this is his year, and that Tuesday night game was really special.
Sometimes he's been underappreciated amongst Houston fans. I mean, I remember you right after the Houston Rockets got bounced from the playoffs and turned out he went to a strip club, how you were getting so mad about how like, oh man, he's not taking this thing seriously. What is going on? You know, like, I mean, James Harden's a special player, and yeah, sometimes he's going to react to things in a weird way, but you know, I mean, like, he's still your star player.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. Yeah, I would say I've been hard on him at times, just because for me, knowing how great a player he is and knowing what he can do when he's just at the peak of his game and seeing him look like he doesn't show effort, it really bothers me, because I know how great of a player he is. Like he is a once in a generation player, and it looks like a waste when he's not putting in effort during certain points in the game and during certain points in the season. But I mean, it's definitely, we are lucky to have him in Houston, and The fact that he's leading the Rockets. This is the best team in franchise history. They tied their 1993-94 championship team on their winning pace through 50 games as they're 37-13. So this is a team that's really special right now. And I think in general, Houston's kind of been asleep to them. Their attendance numbers haven't been too good. And I don't know if that's just Astros championship hangover, but I think Rockets fans really need to start paying attention to this team because it's Golden State and then it's them really for an NBA championship. And if something goes wrong with the Warriors with an injury, then they're going to be right there next in line to potentially be that team that is a favorite going all the way to the championship. Thursday night, they beat the Spurs. The shorthanded Spurs are just really, really poor offensively. And it's just credit to Greg Popovich that they've had a 34-20 record, number 3 seed in the West, despite not having Kawhi Leonard, who's a top 3 player in the NBA for the whole season, basically. The Rockets, James Harden only had 28 points and 11 assists, and they controlled it from start to finish. Were good defensively. Gerald Green, who you doubted his ability to score off the bench, he's been playing more now with Trevor Ariza out and Eric Gordon out, and he had 15 points off the bench, and he's been good in that spot for the team. Tonight, they play at the Cleveland Cavaliers, the shorthanded Cleveland Cavaliers, who are going to be without a significant member of their team in Kevin Love for the next 2 months. Then they go to Brooklyn next week and then at Miami, and then they come home for a game against Denver.
Yeah, no, they got a busy week, but they've been dominant. So this is definitely a special team. They have arguably out of any team, the best shot of beating the Warriors in the playoffs. Cross fingers that they do. But it's gonna be real interesting to see how this team keeps struggling along. Hopefully Chris Paul comes back healthy. That was always going to be a risk for trading for someone that old, but also with that much of an injury history. Congrats on the Rockets. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Mavs keep losing, and I keep being happy about it. Let's see, who did they lose to? They lost to the Phoenix Suns. They lost to the Miami Heat, and they lost a close game to Denver, although it wasn't really close for much of that game, but it was just like a nice sort of it became close as the game came down to the wire. And that's something that you want to see out of your team, is just how they respond to adversity, how they respond to being down, and especially with such a young team. Dennis Smith has been a very consistent scorer, hitting around 15 points a game, getting 5 assists, contributing a bit in rebounds, but he's shown some consistency that most rookies don't really reach at this point in the season, because usually most of the time they either hit the wall or teams have figured them out. But yeah, no, it looks like Dennis Smith has already morphed into a solid starter in this team, in this game, and he's only 19, so he has plenty of growth to go, and there's plenty of room for him to grow. I don't think he's not gonna win Rookie of the Year, nor is he gonna win Rookie of the Month this past month. That's probably gonna go to Donovan Mitchell on both accounts. At the end of the day, I still think they knocked it out of the park with this pick, even though they still had a chance to get Donovan Mitchell. The thing about Donovan Mitchell is that yes, he's a great scorer and all that, but at the same time, the Mavs needed a pure point guard, and this Dennis Smith is more of that. And I think it's still very possible that the Dennis Smith Jr. becomes an even bigger superstar than Donovan Mitchell, which is saying something, because Donovan Mitchell arguably at this point is a superstar. So today they play against Sacramento Kings in a race to the bottom. Hopefully the Mavs lose this game. Los Angeles Clippers, hopefully they lose that game. And then the Golden State Warriors, they'll definitely lose that game. But speaking of the Los Angeles Clippers, they made a huge trade, trading arguably their biggest star that they've ever had besides Chris Paul, but really their best homegrown talent has been traded away to the Detroit Pistons for Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, and a few picks.
Wow, that was my first thought. I did not see this coming. It was not really on any radar. I know the Clippers this year have been rather disappointing. I know they've had injuries, but losing Chris Paul, they kind of tried to hang in there for the 6, 7, 8 seed in the West. And they've actually been playing a lot better lately. They had gotten above 500, but They just decide that they're going to completely rebuild and start over. And Blake Griffin, who they signed that huge max contract to in the offseason, and part of their pitch to Blake was a mock jersey retirement ceremony where they brought Blake Griffin into the Staples Center and they raised his jersey to the rafters, said, hey, you know, you're going to be the first Clipper to have his jersey hanging in the rafters, be a part of this. Blake signed the deal. And Blake Griffin was very moved by the ceremony, and he said, yeah, let's do it. I want to be a lifelong Clipper. And then 8 months later, they trade him. So that's just the business of basketball. But I think that's bad on the Clippers' part for Blake Griffin. This guy is committing to your team long term, and then you just dump him off in a salary dump later. For Detroit, I think it's very interesting. I don't know if it's going to work between Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. Their wing depth is pretty much decimated now with the trade. So it's going to be Griffin and Drummond trying to, I guess, be a poor man's version of DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis in New Orleans before Boogie Cousins got hurt. I think the East is very soft down low. I think that was a point that was made this week, how you look at the Eastern Conference contenders, and Boston is soft inside. Cleveland is soft inside. They're decimated with injuries. Washington has front court issues. So if Detroit can get into the playoffs, they can certainly have a chance of pulling an upset, because there's not many teams in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA for that matter that can match a Drummond Griffin front court. But long term, I think on the back end of that contract, with Blake Griffin getting $31 million a year and his injury concerns, I think he's missed close to 30% of the games the past 3 years for the Clippers. I think that might look really bad. And we'll see if Stan Van Gundy, he's certainly under fire for his lack of success in Detroit. So maybe this is a case of him going, hey, I won't be here in 2 or 3 years anyway. Let's just sell the farm and you know, I won't deal with that. That will be somebody else dealing with that.
Well, I mean, like at the end of the day, too, I mean, like you look at this Pistons team prior to that, and they were the 9th seed essentially in the East. And so even with the wing depth that they had with Avery Bradley and Tobias Harris, who were both contributing pretty well, this just was not a team that looked like it was going to make it to the playoffs. And even if they made it to the playoffs, they would have been bounced in the first round fairly quickly. So this was their attempt to, like you talked about, like exploit a weakness of the East, which is that they're weak down low, and B, also just to at least get another superstar in there, just to like at least spice things up and see how things go. I mean, like as much as people like to say that like Blake Griffin isn't that great at spacing the floor, he's actually improved at the 3-point line and as well as with his jump shot, and he's pretty good at that now, and hopefully that helps at least ease his transition as he gets older, especially becoming more of a shooter and not someone that relies so much on the dunks and the post game, just because that takes such a huge toll on your body. But yeah, essentially what they're trying to do is very similar to the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, we'll speak about them in a bit, but on the Clippers side, I think it's very interesting that, I mean, this team that was kind of in the playoffs already, or at least like in the playoffs around the time of the trade, make this trade just to get that wing depth that Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris gives, pretty much looking like they're moving Danilo to the forward position, which I mean probably is his more natural position, honestly. You think about if this team had Patrick Beverley, and like, yeah, this team might be a bit better than it is right now, but I mean, it looks like now this is DeAndre Jordan's team, and like DeAndre Jordan's probably going to opt out, and they might have to go through another spiel about, hey, we want you to retire a Clipper. I mean, like as much as like I dislike DeAndre and how much I think it's going to be interesting to see him go through another misadventure through a free agency. He'd probably be wise to see how they treated Blake in the first place. So that should be an interesting thing to see this summer. But I don't know what this makes the Clippers. I don't know if the Clippers are going to make the playoffs this year. And I mean, at least they got picks out of this, so that's something.
Yeah, well, I think this is an acknowledgement that their window's closed. That core of Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, it's over, and they need to rebuild. They know the Lakers in that market are coming up. I think they've accepted the fact that they don't think LeBron James or one of the big free agents is going to go to LA and sign with the Clippers. So they're just deciding, I mean, they're going to move Lou Williams at some point. they're shopping DeAndre Jordan to see. I mean, there's rumors absurd, but DeAndre Jordan for Clint Capella, which no.
Why? I mean, like, look, I mean, like, both of them are going to be like hitting free agency, but one of them's going to be a restricted free agent, which gives you a far better chance.
Yeah, and I don't mean to bring up this bad memory, if you will, but you think about the whole DeAndre Jordan to Dallas thing, and you had that absurd JJ Redick driving to Dallas and Blake Griffin coming in and Chris Paul coming in. They're all gone. DeAndre is the only one left, and we'll see how long he's there, but he's probably looking around being like, what? Yeah. I should have just gone to Dallas maybe.
Yeah, probably. I mean, like, we could definitely use him this year, but yeah. But he planned. Funny that the one person left from that core is DeAndre, and he's the one that was thinking the most about moving out and trying to start his own thing. But there he is on a rebuilding team, and the thing that he was worried about going to in Dallas. In your face, man. But yeah, let's actually move on to the New Orleans Pelicans, who actually made a great trade to get Nikola Mirotic from the Chicago Bulls. Like, this is, I think, a great trade. This he was arguably the best center on the market, even though DeAndre probably was the better one. The thing about it, though, is that they were able to dump Omer Ashik and also Tony Allen and Jameer Nelson, which, I mean, granted, that kind of hurts their depth, but I mean, their depth was never very good. So, I mean, like, Nikola Mirotic, I mean, is a center that can shoot threes and can still defend the paint fairly decently. I mean, yeah, maybe he's not necessarily their best 3-point shooter, but he definitely replaces what DeMarcus Cousins gave, which was a center that could defend the paint and shoot threes and get rebounds. So, I mean, like, they were able to kind of replace him, not fully replace him, just because DeMarcus is really is truly a star in his own right, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, what's going to be interesting to see is what the Pelicans do in the offseason if they try to re-sign Mirotic due to the fact that he's a restricted free agent, or they try to re-sign Boogie, especially since Boogie is supposed to be out for much of next year. So with this trade and giving up a first-round pick, maybe they try re-signing Mirotic and then letting Boogie walk. So this might actually spell the end for Boogie in New Orleans, and it's going to be interesting to see where he signs in the offseason.
Well, I like the trade for New Orleans. They definitely need some reinforcements up front after the Boogie Cousins injury. This is a team that still wants to make the playoffs. They want to show Anthony Davis that they're committed to winning long term there. And so I think this is a good trade for them. They didn't really give up much for a first round pick. If they make the playoffs, will be bottom of the first round. So in Chicago, obviously in a complete rebuild, Mirotic and Bobby Portis had that incident in the preseason where Bobby Portis punched Mirotic and actually broke his jaw, and he was out for several weeks. But good trade for both sides. I don't know about the Boogie Cousins thing long term. I
don't know what the market is going to be for a guy coming off an Achilles injury.
I think for this year, New Orleans is still going to be hanging in there for one of those 6, 7, 8 seeds, and maybe they get to pull an upset against a banged up San Antonio team or a Minnesota team that's inexperienced. We'll see.
This might open up the door for the Mavs to go after Boogie this year, especially since, again, like, they're not going to be relying too heavily on him coming back next year. So should make for an interesting case to see. Let's now move on to a few injury updates. We talked about first the John Wall injury. John Wall missing some games, and Washington Wizards are still winning, and they're actually taking shots at him. What's your take on this?
Wow, you got to fill me in on the details. I think for John Wall injury, that's huge for a Wizards team that's really struggled with injuries over the course of this year. I think John Wall's been playing really, really well for them, and they were in the mix of one of those teams that could win the East, with Cleveland having their bunch of issues. But I think without him long term, that's going to hurt.
But apparently, a lot of their teammates have been tweeting about how, like, they've been getting really good team wins, and it's great how everyone's passing around the ball. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, there's always been kind of some undertones of how he and Bradley Beal never got along. I thought those two had kind of figured those issues out, but it's guess it hasn't. And I don't know about that drama in the locker room. That's going to be a headache for Scott Brooks if he has an issue with his superstar point guard.
Yeah, they got to work that thing out while he's out. But speaking of someone that's out, Kevin Love's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, like there had been talks and rumors about how people were ganging up against Kevin Love as being part of the reason why the Cavs have been struggling. I mean, I would say the big reason they're struggling is that they've kind of gone down from Kyrie Irving to Isaiah Thomas. But what's your take on that?
Well, Cleveland's done at this point. They already were so bad on the defensive side of the ball, and they're losing their second best player this year. Isaiah Thomas certainly has to step up now, but I know I asked you last week, do you think Cleveland's going to win the East? And you said absolutely not. And I think I'm with you now with Boston, Toronto. We'll see what Washington is. I think the Cavs are in deep trouble.
I mean, at least they have that Brooklyn pick, so they can at least start over, start things over once LeBron jumps to another team. But I have this weird image of LeBron going back to the Heat, and I'm just like, okay.
Did you buy those LeBron to Golden State rumors?
No, I've never bought those. Like, it's just like so you move Draymond to the 5, and then move Durant to the 4, and then. I just think it's such a stupid thing to do. If they do that, then like
shut down the league.
Broken. Yeah, the league is officially broken. Like the only reason this Cleveland team has been able to get to the finals so many years. I mean, yeah, you had that supporting cast of Kyrie and Kevin Love, but I mean, like if it wasn't for LeBron, then they wouldn't have been making it so many times and so dominantly. Just no. Good God, no.
Yeah, no, I think that was Bill Simmons said that like that was clearly a leak by the LeBron camp to basically screw with the Warriors' chemistry, and I
just screw with the chemistry. I don't know how that screws with their chemistry because they're like, oh man, LeBron wants to come here. What are we gonna do? I don't know.
Well, they would have had to get rid of Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston probably. So. That was probably.
Well, I mean, like, no offense to Andre Iguodala, but why wouldn't you? Like, I mean, shit for LeBron James. Like, come on. Like, if I were Andre Iguodala, I would understand. But also at the same time, like, no, you don't need LeBron James in order to win a championship. So why would you do that?
NBA players have feelings, and they get hurt very easily.
Yeah, they have feelings. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I love the NBA. It's constant drama 24/7. Now move on to college basketball. The Texas Longhorns got a nice win against Ole Miss, pretty dominant. Mo Bamba had season highs of 25 points and had 15 rebounds. And then they lost a heartbreaker in Lubbock, losing to Texas Tech on the buzzer beater in overtime.
Well, I think the Ole Miss that was taking out the trash. That was a very good win. Bombo Sikowski dominated down low. Curran Roach has been on a scoring surge lately. The Tech game was very frustrating just because you had your shot at winning on the road at the 10th ranked team in the country, but you couldn't hit free throws down the stretch. I think they were 14 of 28 or something like that, shooting free throws. They came back from a double-digit deficit, and that was impressive. Their defense really wasn't good that game. Keenan Evans went off for a career high in points, and he had the game-winning shot at the buzzer in overtime. But there's questions on the officiating, which I never really like to do. The refs do not have it in for one team, but I think the free throw shooting and I think they've been in so many close games against good teams. You think about that Duke game, you think about that Gonzaga game, and these are really marquee games that can elevate you on the seeding line when it comes to Selection Sunday. And especially if you continue to, they're 4-5 in the conference, and I keep saying if they're 9-9, they're in, but they have a tough schedule coming up. And if they lose a couple of these games, they're going to regret some of these ones that they let get away.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they already regret it now, but I mean, at the same time too, like you said, I mean, making free throws, if they made free throws, they would have beaten Duke, they would have beaten Oklahoma State, and they would have beaten Texas Tech, just straight up. And it's frustrating to see this program struggle with free throws year after year. even after coach turnover. This isn't necessarily on Shaka. I mean, it is on Shaka, but I mean, like, it's not just Shaka that had this problem. Rick Barnes had this problem. I mean, is there something in the Austin water that we haven't taken care of that makes people miss their free throws? I mean, I don't understand it. In all fairness, though, I mean, I will say Matt Coleman has improved at the free throw line. So I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yes, so today the Longhorns played Oklahoma in a huge matchup. College game day. It was in Austin earlier today, and we'll see if they can stop Trae Young and the high-flying Oklahoma offense. He's been drawing comparisons to Steph Curry, and certainly will go in the NBA lottery next year. So that's a huge game. If they pick up a win, that'd be another boost to their resume. And then Wednesday night, I really think they need that win against Kansas State at home. They're in competition with them for the 5 or 6 seed in the Big 12, and that would be a huge blow. And if the Longhorns were to lose the next two, I think they would definitely be on the bubble come Selection Sunday time.
But yeah, let's move on to shout-outs now. First shout-out I want to do actually is to the Royal Rumble. For the first time ever, not only did they have a women's Royal Rumble, but they had an Asian both win the men's and women's Royal Rumble. In fact, this is the first time an Asian has won the men's Royal Rumble ever. So congratulations to Shinsuke Nakamura and to Asuka for winning their respective Royal Rumbles. They'll now have guaranteed matches at WrestleMania, and it's looking like it's going to be Shinsuke versus AJ Styles for the WWE Championship, which should be a great match. I mean, it's a rematch of their match that they had at Wrestle Kingdom 10 for New Japan Wrestling. And with Asuka, I mean, Asuka is arguably their best women's wrestler on the roster. That being said, now the biggest news coming out of Royal Rumble is that Ronda Rousey is now joining WWE full time. I mean, I haven't seen her do any wrestling yet, and I've been assuming that she's been doing some training at the Performance Center, which hopefully has translated into some good maneuvers and stuff. I mean, she has the chance to be the Brock Lesnar of the women's division, but at the same time too, Brock Lesnar is a phenomenal athlete that could translate from MMA back to WWE, back to MMA, back to WWE, while also having a chance to make it to the NFL. Yeah, what's your take on Ronda Rousey joining the WWE?
Oh, yeah, no, I think it's great. Certainly she has star power. I think she has a following. I think it's great for the sport, and I think it'll certainly draw in viewers that maybe didn't pay attention before. It's trying to draw maybe viewers away from UFC to WWE. Great.
For sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, shout out to the Dallas Stars. Although they haven't exactly been great this week, they lost 2 games while also winning one against Arizona Coyotes. They lost to the Kings 3-0, unfortunately, but hey, it is what it is. Also, shout out to John Neese for signing a minor league deal with the Rangers. Again, like as everyone has said, it's been a slow offseason.
All right, so shout-outs for me. First to Roger Federer for winning his 20th career Grand Slam last week in the Australian Open, winning in 5 sets against Marin Cilic, the greatest tennis player of all time, winning 20 career majors. So shout out Roger Federer. A couple of Houston Dynamo shout-outs. First to DeMarcus Beasley. He's going to re-sign with the Houston Dynamo for a 5th season at age 35, and he's going to compete with left back Dylan Remick for a starting spot. We'll see if he can get some playing time. Probably will be more of a rotation player, but also provide some veteran leadership. He has played in 4 World Cups for the United States national team. Also, shout out to Ricardo Clark, an original Houston Dynamo, came over with the team from San Jose in 2006. Also played for the U.S. men's national team as a midfielder in the World Cup. But he signs with Columbus Crew SC. The Dynamo have a lot of midfield depth. They've gone in a younger and more athletic direction. And so the 34-year-old departs and goes off to Columbus. So good luck to him, one of my favorite Dynamo players. Was such a strong player in the midfield, both defensively and offensively. So good luck to the Dynamo legend. And then finally, shout out to former Astro #1 overall pick Mark Appel. He's stepping away from baseball at age 26. Former Astros #1 pick in 2014. He was traded to the Phillies in the Ken Giles deal, but he has not had a good run as a minor leaguer. I think last year he had a 5 ERA at AAA in the Phillies organization, and he would only be the third ever number 1 overall pick to never play in the major leagues. So it just shows you, again, as we mentioned last week, that not only to have top tier picks, but you need to pick the right guys. And the Astros, despite not picking the right guy, Mark Appel, they have been able to recover and still become world champions. So I want you guys to visit our website, TwoNatesOnSports.com. Also like us on Facebook at 2NatesOnSports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, where you'll get a notification as soon as we release our new episodes. You can also send us any comments and suggestions to our inbox at 2NatesOnSports@gmail.com. Nathan, go Eagles, and I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you then, man.